Hi, this is Verso. It's a live code editing tool aimed towards music production. Within Verso, you would type your code on this integrated code editor on the right, and it will automatically parse your code and organize it as a grid, not unlike Ableton Live or Bitwig Studio would. And in this manner, you can choose and play each section individually as such. To stop playback, you can simply press the stop button and you're good to go. Once you open Verso for the first time, you will be greeted with a help message. This will point you to Verso's documentation as well as tidalcycles' documentation, which is the language currently supported by Verso. Support for other languages is expected to be developed towards the future, but as of right now, Verso is in its early alpha stage and it only supports tidalcycles. You can load an example to get started and you can build on top of it, and if you're lost at any moment, you can press the help button to trigger this modal again. Right now we have a file open in Verso. This is a regular tidalcycles source code file. What Verso does is it parses this file, it breaks it down onto different blocks so long as you follow a few principles. For example, if you want to create a new block on your grid, you would start to do so within tidalcycles by typing do and then the relevant code. Optionally, you can name the section by writing a comment, which is @name and name of your section. That's enough to have a section defined on the grid, which you can then trigger at will. It's a very basic concept, but it's especially useful for larger tracks if you're doing a lot of composition and you want to have control over what part of your code you're playing, and you don't want to simply search for code inside a text file. This is an alternative to that. Verso is currently in a very early alpha stage, but if you want to run it, you can do so by accessing this URL, which is versoprod.herokuapp.com. Here you have all of the interface, but in order for Verso to work, you actually have to run a backend on your local machine. This is what will provide Verso with access to both the file system and the patterning engine, which you're going to need. To do so, you have to clone the repository after you install the dependencies, which you can do with yarn install. Then you can just run yarn run backend. This command will automatically start your REPL, in this case your tidalcycles REPL. What Verso does is it sends this code to the REPL on demand. So there you go. The Verso backend will run your tidalcycles REPL as a regular console would. So if you have your own library, if you have your own boot file with your own functions, you can just point to that and it'll detect and parse whatever you have. I rely on a lot of functions that I have defined myself. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to run a snippet of code which uses these functions, which are not default by tidalcycles, just to show that this is possible. In this example, both the set key and the k functions are functions that I have created. If you were to run this on your boot file, unless you have the code that defines those functions, you will not have access to them. You can configure the behavior of Verso in a number of ways by using the settings menu. So here you would define the host and the port which will be running the Verso backend. The settings menu will update settings for the Verso interface. So at least in the port of the backend, you have to define for the backend as well. This is defined by a few flags which you can pass as you're running the Verso backend, such as the Verso port internal flag. And this will change the port which the Verso backend will be listening to. Likewise, you can change the initial folder by passing Verso so there you go. And now, because this folder does not exist, I do not show any files. But if I were to type a folder that actually does contain files, such as this one in my case, then yeah, by pressing load, these will be detected. If you have defined here an initial folder for Verso to open, which points to a directory with tidalcycle source code files, then by pressing load, it'll list those files for you, and you can choose one and open it. And likewise, if you say write something here, then you can save this file, and if you go back to it again afterwards, that'll still be there. These changes are persisted. Beware, these will overwrite your file. If you erase this and you save, well, then you may have lost changes to a file. Personal suggestion, always keep those things in a version control system, such as Git. So there you go. That about wraps it up. I hope you guys enjoy using Verso. I hope it's useful for whatever it is that you're creating. I expect that in the future, Verso will support a number of different languages. I'm currently developing Verso at a very slow pace because it's kind of a personal project. I don't have the time to dedicate myself full time to it. But that said, I encourage anyone that wants to contribute to Verso to hit me up and open an issue, open a pull request. If you need help with anything running the project, you can let me know. Yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed, and see you guys later.